this particular book, I decided to remember about one hat. I'm a researcher, I'm a scholar. So I conducted small research. I went to the website and of Library of Congress. I went to our library, Library of Columbia University, and tried to find something similar. And I realized that up to now, we have many, many years of relations between two great countries, two great nations. There was no such book which presents literature and culture of Kazakhstan in a very simple way. So I said, hey, we have to do something about it. And then I decided to do one more thing. I decided to develop this book and to develop a concept, again, being a scholar and human being. As a scholar, I deal with numbers, I deal with diplomacy, I deal with, economics. I don't deal with shutdowns, not yet. It didn't happen in any of my research in Kazakhstan. So, but when I have free time, actually, I would like to read. I would like to read about culture. I would like to enjoy intellectual works and cultural works. So I said to myself, I have to conceptualize, to have a concept, how to present to American audience. Huge universe. It's big. For many, many decades, for some reasons, I don't know, we know the reason. It was in the shadow of Russian culture and Soviet culture. But it's much, much bigger than that. It was there in a particular great liberation step way before Russia and Russians, and it was still there during Russian imperial time. It was still there during Soviet time. But unfortunately, people in the United States didn't know about it. So I decided to develop a concept in a very simple way to explain what the meaning of being Kazakh, what's the meaning of Kazakh literature, and what is the meaning of Kazakh art. And I have to simplify. So, it's not good, but we always do it. So when we talk about Americans, and today I had a question, what Kazakh thinks about Americans? So in three simple words, young generation of my students, they say, ask them, what is the meaning of Americans? They say, Americans, it's about Hollywood, it's about rock and roll. Actually, even I have an order to bring a rock and roll DVD to Kazakhstan after coming back. And it is about, cowboys. So, and I decided to think about how to conceptualize Kazakh culture. And we can talk about different nations trying to find differences. But what about similarities? And I started to explore similarities. And to my mind, one great similarity between two great nations. Americans started as a great nation in a wild place, huge steppe, if Kazakh will call it, they call it different way. And started with friends, horses, riding horses and exploring new places. And moving from place to place. Even today, in American culture, in the movies, in songs, country songs, and in perception of universe, in perception of the world around people. People still think about nature, they still love animals, they still love horses. So similar to Kazakhs, even if they sit somewhere in the jungle of houses and offices, but when they have opportunity, they go out to explore nature like Americans. To explore their relations with nature, like Americans, and to love animals, like horses. Today I had a question: why horses are on the cover of the book? I believe it represents nature and represents what unites two nations, similarities in culture. So I thought this is the way how it should be. It's the way how we should explore. And I thought that this particular book will be very important. So many people say, look, it's like shutdown, it's economic issues, it's money, it's banking, finance, it's diplomacy, it's in the security. But we are people, we are human beings, should be doing something beyond it. We should remain human beings, should explore relations between people. We should talk about nature, about love of nature, and we should explore each other, because when we explore each other, we understand each other much, much better. So I believe if we come to different nation, to different country, talking about only business, only diplomacy, only security, and the person who comes with the simple, that's very limited number of questions, he or she will remain like machine, part of like bureaucracy or part of business machine. But when we expand it, will remain faceless. But if we would like to establish human relations, if you would like people to understand other people better, understand others better, and remember I deal with public diplomacy too. So we talk to you something about beyond it. We share a cup of tea. In Central Asia, they say, they have a very famous proverb. When you come to me and share a cup of tea with me, you are my guest when you share first time. And when you share a cup of tea, you don't talk about numbers, you talk about business, you talk about something what makes us human beings. So first time you are a friend, a guest. Second time when you come and you have some topics to continue to discuss, you become a friend. And third time when people come, actually becoming close friends, become part of a family. And for family members, it's very famous Central Asian proverb, we will do everything. And what makes us human being, what makes builds these particular relations, what makes similar, culture. And I thought this particular book, it's very small, it's a very small tip of the iceberg of very rich Kazakh literature. And I hope we will continue meeting again and again, exploring more, learning more about Kazakh literature. So this book will give you a little flavor about contemporary literature. We had long debates with many intellectuals in Kazakhstan how to present modern Kazakh literature post-World War II. And up to now, it is before independence and after independence, what to show, how to select, what is the best. And trust me, when you have 100 books, 100,000 points, it's a very difficult job to select a small number, because we are limited in size, and to show the flavor. I hope it will be, and it's up to you to judge how successful we were. And I hope when you read the book, when you read poems, what we selected for this particular collection, when you read the prose, you will start understanding better Kazakhstan, and with Kazakhstan you start understanding better Central Asia, and with understanding better Central Asia, you understand greater Central Asia and Eurasia. And you will open, and you will have maybe one more home where you will be welcomed, because you know culture, you know values and ideas will drive people in this particular part of the world. And I hope our meeting is not last, and I hope to see you time and again with new ideas, with new opportunities, and maybe with new books. Thank you very much.
We're only partway through the program. We have the Q&A session, but I can't help but saying, I referred in my introductory remarks to how appreciative we in the National Press Club are whenever we are invited to the Kazakhstan Embassy for part of the Embassy Night series. We're grateful because we know whenever we go to the Kazakhstan Embassy, that Embassy Night is going to be informative and intellectual. And this program more than lives up to our expectations, and why we're so pleased that the Kazakhstan Embassy chose tonight to have the first publication of the first anthology in English of its literature, of the Kazakh literature at the National Press Club. I was going to hold that for the end, but Ambassador, we are all so happy, and we're not even finished. And there's still a reception to follow. For those of you that came in a little late, do not rush out after this event is over. This is like a little interlude. Our good friend Nurgali of the political counselor at the embassy, he worked with me on this program, and he and I are similar because we love to worry. And Nurgali was worried, would there be enough room? And I said, this conference rooms can hold everybody that you think you're going to have, and we'll still have room for a reception. Well, we filled up one room, and then we filled up two rooms, and then we realized there's no room for the reception. Don't worry, it's in the First Amendment Lounge afterward. But Nurgali, I think at the reception, I don't want you to worry. You're going to all relax and enjoy yourselves. Thank you. So for the Q&A, what we'll do is raise your hand if you want to ask a question. I think the room is large enough that if you speak loudly that we'll be able to hear your question, and then the appropriate person will move a microphone around so that you can all hear the answer. Yes, in the second row, please.
Yes, greetings. I had the pleasure of working in Kazakhstan beginning in 1994, so I've seen it over 20 years, hard to believe. My name is Mindy Reiser. I have a cold. I'm a sociologist. I wanted to ask, I think Professor Abazov would be best, in terms of the literary culture in Kazakhstan, do you have small publications? Do you have small presses? Do you have writing programs? I'm interested in what the kind of fertile soil is for developing younger writers in print and in opportunities for conferences and the sharing of ideas and stimuli.
Thank you very much for your question. You know, Kazakh culture is very different. And young writers, young poets start in a very different way and in a different place. Very often when people have family events, public events, they invite writers, poets to read, to talk about something, not as I told you, not just about everyday life, but something which goes beyond, which makes us human beings. To think about relations between people, about families, about home, about youth. And that's the first step when young people have establish a relation, like young poets and writers establish their relations with their potential audience. If people like those poems, if people like the prose, if people like the music, songs, they actually, start to explore opportunities. And here one more similarity between American culture and Kazakh culture. People in the United States are very generous to support art. And philanthropy right now is growing in Kazakhstan. So because of philanthropy, young poets, young writers have opportunity to publish, maybe in small variants, and they go step by step to make it big. And if you're answering the technical part of your question, yes, they have a lot of small publishing houses and small prints and a lot of young people without any censorship, unlike the past. Because they have support from the public, they have small audience or readers. They can publish their works, their poems, their prose, their songs, and the move. If they are successful, if they're good, talented, they can move up. If not, I believe everyone in this audience once in a while wrote a poem or something for his or her soul or devoting to someone else.
Will radio and television also highlight the work of the writers?
I had a privilege to be at on one channel. It's about culture, and this entire channel, I think 24/7, gives opportunity for people to explore culture, and for writers and poets and intellectuals to talk about culture and intellectual life. So that they have one channel which is specifically devoted to culture. Thank you.
Yes, please. And you might want to say who you are and what organization you're with so we become more acquainted with everybody. Yes, please.
I'm a retired public servant, but a fan of literature. As you know, sir, Russian literature has a great influence and great Russian writers on all over the world, especially in South Asian, where I come from, writers. They were great writers, and I wonder if you can say something about has there been any influence of Russian literature and Russian writers on Kazakh, new Kazakh writers, especially those that are included in this book?
Thank you. From my discussions, as I told you, I had a lot of discussions and debates, and sometimes hard debates with intellectuals in Kazakhstan. Many Kazakhs have different perception about relations with Russia. Many people say it about one way. Russian literature, Russian poetry had huge influence on Kazakh literature and northern Kazakh artistic life. Kazakhs see it differently because they believe it's a two-way movement because they shared geographic space, Eurasia. They shared history, sometimes violent, sometimes very close. Therefore, they believe they had influence on Russian literature, and Russian literature had influence on them. Say, for example, in the United States, Dostoevsky, one of the most well-known writer of, like we call Silver Age of Russian literature. But you remember, he spent a lot of time and exile in what is Kazakhstan today. So he had kind of like relations with local people. He talked to them, and it all talked to him too. So it means that relations with it was not probably never one way. It was both ways. And like to take any name in in Russian literature, they had some connections in one way or another with the Great Steppe and people who live in the Great Steppe. They learned about them, about their culture, they had interactions, and they, somehow reflected it. Take Lev Tolstoy, and he had very close connection, and he tried to learn more about novels. He wrote nice, short stories about them. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, please.
Кешіріңіз, сіз қазақша білесіз бе? Осы жазған мына кітаптардың бәрін қазақша оқыдыңыз ба?
Қазақша оқыған жоқпын, бірақ орысша оқыдым.
Жоқ, мен сізден сұрап тұрған жоқпын, мына кісіден сұрап тұрмын.
Мен қазақша түсінемін.
Түсінесіз. Қазақша оқи аласыз ба?
Қазақша оқи аламын. Бірақ бұларда мен орысша оқыдым.
Орысша аудардыңыз, иә? Орысшадан.
Мен емес, мен переводчик болдым.
Жарайды, рахмет.
Professor Bazat, we are all intrigued to hear about this discussion. It was, thank you. I have to confess, I don't know what you said, but you said it very vividly, and I'm waiting for the translation, please.
We had a short discussion about this particular book, because writers and poets selected for this book, some of them were bilingual. Some of them wrote in entirely in Kazakh language, and some of them wrote entirely in Russian language. And she asked me about if I read all of the prose and poetry in this particular book in Kazakh language. I honestly said I understand Kazakh, I speak Kazakh, I read Kazakh, but for this particular book, most of the poems and prose I read in Russian, prepared in Russian. And I had a translator. Trust me, it's very, very, very difficult to find a translator who can translate poetry. I tried to search on many continents. I tried to search in Europe, I tried to search in Australia, I tried to search in North American continent, and finally I found a very good translator who understands not only the meaning of the poems and prose, what we have here in this particular book, but he understands the soul of every story, every poem in this particular book. So, unfortunately, he can translate only from Russian. In future, we hope we will find people who can translate directly from Kazakh language. But at this stage, for first time, we decided to go this way. And we had this short discussion about it. Thank you.
I'm always pleased to call on students, and we have a question from one of our students.
Professor Bazat, thank you for this book. I have a question. What's your future projects regarding the Kazakh literature, especially in English, and presenting to American and English-speaking people?
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. I wanted to keep it a secret, but this question was straightforward. I think right now we all people in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia, in Central Asia, talk about our relations with nature. We talk about climate change, and we talk about future of our world. So I thought that we can learn something from nomads, from Kazakhs, from people who live in Central Eurasia, Great Central Asian Steppe. They had very specific relations with nature, because I recommend you to read Suleimanov. Olda Suleimanov, he has very interesting, very short poem about wolves. So when my American colleagues read this book and said this, it's so graphic, it's so shows connection with nature, it comes under my skin. This is way how to express it. And he cannot play with nature. We cannot play with our world. If you destroyed one place, like for nomads, it's no place to live, no place to have like animals, no place to have food, you die. So you have to take care of your nature around you, and around your village, around your town, around your district. So I thought that particular relations of nomads with nature created some lessons and philosophy and concept about people and nature. So I thought maybe next project will be about this concept, relations of people and nature. Like as Americans, many of you here, Americans who live in the United States, study United States, or deal with the United States in different ways. You know how Americans perceive nature, how perceive relations with nature. And here probably it will be very interesting for Western audience, for American audience, to explore the ways how nomads, how people in Great Eurasian Steppe perceive their relations with nature, how it affects their perception of universe and perception of life, yesterday, today, and in future. So this is, I hope it will be my project.
Professor Abazov, I would only make one request, that when your book is published, that you launch it at the National Press Club. Please, yes.
Dr. Abazov, thank you so much for this book. As the law said, you should go to Kazakhstan and meet the people because you will like things are least correct. I like them so much I married them. I'm Sloganov, and students some distant relations with Kazakh poet. But just wanted to say thank you, and I will look forward to reading this book.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. I'd just like to ask if any of the other panelists have anything they wish to add before we move to the next part of the program.
I would like just to add that we would like to continue with the same series at the embassy, and it was several times mentioned the name of Olga Sulemenov. He is a well-known poet in Kazakhstan and outside of Kazakhstan. He's the person actually who, from the very early years of his poetical work, was well known in the former Soviet Union, and when we got independence, he became well known from a different point of view, from anti-nuclear movement which he established. And he's a great thinker, and he was quite recently included into the book which was published, 22 World Thinkers. And he is really a remarkable person, and we at the embassy are working to invite him to Washington, D.C., and to have probably his presentations here. So he actually, Dr. Abazov, he published the book about his poetry. We would like to launch it sometime here in Washington, D.C. I hope that the shutdown will not just affect this event, but we would like to see him here in November 4th and 5th. And of course, we will inform you about the place, the time, just giving you kind of advertisement for you to look for. But he is a person who wrote a book. Actually, it was a question about the influence of Russian and Kazakh literature. He wrote a book long ago, which was kind of a huge explosion in the scientific and literary world when, as a young poet, he wrote a book, Asia. Asia means Asia. But in this book, he actually was talking about the very ancient literary work which was found in the Russian. It's the first written monument of the Russian literature. And he actually, when he just got to this book and analyzed the words which were used in this written document, and he found out that this book was not written by Russians, but it was written by some of the representatives of the tribes who lived in that particular area. And it was at that time the Communist Party and all the academicians, they were all against him. And it was a scandalous book which was prohibited to be published. But from this, he is well known as a person who is speaking his mind, who is speaking very clearly about what he thinks about the world and philosophy. And he's the one who actually right now works on the migratory processes. And he got this world forums in New York, and he just did that. Next one is coming in China, where he invites the historians from different worlds, and they're talking about from where actually the mankind started. And I think he's just doing it from the language point of view. I think it's a very interesting way of exploring where the roots of the language comes from. So it's just like a preview, and I hope that we will have an interest from this audience to see him and be part of his presentations here in Washington. So it's just like an announcement.
Thank you, Your Excellency. May I ask you to, Your Excellency, to come here for one moment for a little presentation? While the ambassador is coming up, people often say, when do you know an event is a success? And I say, first, if it's a luncheon, when the speaker shows up, in this case, the panel. And secondly, when the audience comes. And this audience, very good questions, excellent turnout. Thank you for your RSVPs that enable us to plan accordingly. And you made a reference to the government shutdown. The National Press Club never shuts down, so you're always welcome here. And we hope you will return for further events. Your Excellency, I don't know if when you visited the office of your predecessor, the now Foreign Minister, Erlan Idrisov, you might have noticed in his office a National Press Club mug, which we presented to him. And he might be a little upset because he probably thought he is the only member of the Kazakhstan government with it. I'm pleased to present to you.
I just would like to mention that I haven't seen it in his office this morning, so probably he took it with himself.
I see. Well, we'll have to look. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please join us at the reception around the corner in the First Amendment Lounge. And also, those of you who would like to have Professor Abazov autograph the book, he would be very happy to do so. So thank you for coming, and please let us adjourn to the First Amendment Lounge.